Josh Emmett. Talk about a return. Talk about a comeback from injury. Talk about a man who has basically said, I will not let anything deter me. I'm 37 years old, but I want a title shot. And that's exactly what he called for after defeating Calvin Kattar via split decision. He said, hey, there's a big fight in 2 weeks. Volkanovski, Holloway number 3. I want the winner of that. Now, I think it's a little bit of a leap from barely edging out Calvin Kattar to wanting to fight Volkanovski or Holloway. I think there's a little bit of a leap there. Nonetheless, man, you shoot your shot when you got it, and this is the time to do it, my man. Let's talk about the fight. Slow start for Calvin Kattar, and Josh Emmett capitalized on that all day, man. That right hand was firing flush. Time after time after time. And I was actually a little surprised. I was like, how many times can he throw this right hand and have success with it? Just like spamming it. I felt like I was watching a video game. I was like, all he's throwing is the right hand, just time and time and time again. Hardly any leg kicks. Actually, when we look at it, Calvin Kattar was 1 for 1 on leg kicks. Josh Emmett, 8 for 9. So it was basically a bona fide boxing match with a couple takedown attempts mixed in there. What do you think for Josh Emmett's side, man? What do you think like propelled him to give Calvin Kattar that slow start, man? Was it the power? Because it felt like that's the thing that was impacting him the most.
That's what I was thinking. It has to be the power, especially just spamming that big power right hand. Because all Calvin Kattar was doing was just spamming that jam for the most part, just keeping him at bay, just those little pump shots, keeping him at bay, circling out. And that's, to me, it seemed like the power that was affecting Calvin Kattar, or Josh Emmett's power was affecting Calvin Kattar so much that he kept him on that bike, man, kind of trying to keep him at distance. And I think that's what had to skew the judges a little, or sway the judges a little bit, because just having that amount of output in the beginning and then petering off in the end, seems like it did enough for him. What do you think?
Well, I definitely would have to say that the power was something that took away the volume of Calvin Kattar. That's kind of what I noticed the most, is that in the last fight, you see lots of leg kicks. You see lots of switching stances back and forth against Giga Chikadze. He's just piecing them up, walking in front of him. But it's kind of crazy to say that if Giga Chikadze doesn't have nearly the same amount of power than Josh Emmett does, how much power does this man Josh Emmett hold? Because Calvin Kattar, his volume, man, I mean, I'll try to pull it up while we're talking and whatnot, but he landed 130 significant strikes out of 375 attempts. And I think that's very low in comparison to his last outing and the numbers in his last outing. So, AJ, real quick, just fill time for me real fast while I go look this up, brother. What do you make of just that, the lack of volume, man? Is it clear, bona fide truth now that Calvin Kattar has to be a volume guy in order to win? He cannot rely on picking his shots and trying to be precise. He has to do massive output. That's what I thought the cardio edge was going to be for. I was like, you got 5-round cardio ready to go. You're putting that volume out, but it just didn't happen. So talk to me.
Well, and he did run away with it a little bit in the end. As the fight progressed, you saw Calvin Kattar, especially I had the 5th round for Kattar. So that's what I was a little surprised by the judging. But it's a razor close fight. You can't be too mad at it. But it seems that is the route, man. Having to be that technician, having to be solid on the feet, hit a couple combos, bounce out, get away from that power. And especially, when as the sleeping dog of Josh Emmett comes to comes to a wake up and finally get back into the fold and into things. Maybe he didn't know that Josh Emmett had that kind of power, kind of underestimating a little bit. Feels one of those right hands the first time and realizes like, oh shit, I'm kind of in a little bit more than I bit off than I can chew. And it was crazy to me to see it against a Giga fight too, man. I thought Kattar was going to come in with some heavy shots, a lot of pressure. But apparently Emmett has that power, man. What'd you find out?
Well, brother, this is actually what's interesting to me, is that when you look at it, this is pretty much on par with what he's done in his last 2 fights. 130 significant strikes against Emmett, 144 against Chikadze, 133 against Holloway. I mean, and then everything else kind of peters off from there. Everything tapers off from there. So literally it goes to show that at the end of the day, he had the same volume. So I don't know, man. Now that's interesting to me. Now it makes me wonder. Judges, brother, what happened? And we'll take a look at that, actually. Let's actually do that right now. Let's take a look at what the judges had to say, brother, because they viewed it very interestingly. Doug Crosby, he actually is the sole judge to give the fight to Kattar. So he gave Kattar's round 2, round 4, and round 5. And I actually kind of agree with that one, man. I think that's the most fair assessment of how the fight took place. Sal D'Amato, of course, gave round 1, 2, and 3 to Emmett, and then 4 and 5 to Kattar. And I can also see the argument for that. I can see them being like, hey, these rounds were close, but Emmett kind of edged it out because he basically had all the momentum in round 1 through 3. And then Chris Lee. Gives Emmett rounds 1, 3, 4. Yeah, 1, 3, and 4. And I think rounds 4 and 5 were clearly Kattar, but rounds 4 was clear. It's like the clearest of day round for Kattar. So when you look at it, it's not just the judging you have to take a peek at. You have to look at what did the media score it as, man. And this is overwhelmingly in favor of Calvin Kattar. Obviously, you got one outlier, 46-49 for Kattar. Yeah, I don't know about that, but 47-48 for Kattar. I thought that was fair. Only maybe it's like 5 to maybe like 10 to 15. 5 for Emmett, like 10 to 15 in favor of Calvin Kattar, brother. So I think it's fair to say that Calvin Kattar, I'm not going to yell robbery. I refuse, because it was a very close fight. And at the end of the day, it is a fighter's job to do enough for the judges to score it in their favor. But at the end of the day, man, I think this is going to be a big learning lesson. And I actually think this is going to be a big derailing factor for a Calvin Kattar, because given his status, his age, he's probably going to have to string together another 2-3 good wins to get himself back into title contention. And that's kind of the question here. What happens if Holloway wins against Volkanovski in the trilogy, and then they got to run it back, make it a 4th fight, and then Josh Emmett's the next contender, and then, you know, Calvin Kattar, excuse me for the stutter on that one. AJ, man, Calvin Kattar, he doesn't fight a lot, bro. Like, you fight once a year, maybe twice a year, just because of these wars that he's getting himself into, man. So let me ask you, are we marking it to the point right now with this loss to Josh Emmett marks that there will be one last good run for Calvin Kattar, or do you think he'll stick around for a while?
Man, I'm on that one run train for Calvin Kattar, man. Even let's say all goes well, you know, Volkanovski, Holloway starts to pan out. Yeah. Sure, Josh Emmett gets the next shot. Calvin Kattar is like 2-3 fights away, man. So I don't really think he is, you know, going to stick around 5+. You know what I'm saying? Like 5+ fights for Calvin Kattar sounds a little crazy. I just pulled up his age. It was like 34. So still not like extremely old, but starting to get to that point where he must be thinking about, you know, the cards, the deck of cards that's laid out in front of him. And honestly, man, even one fight away for Josh Emmett seems a little bit of a stretch for the title shot. Yeah. I think he's also 2 to 3, maybe 1 to 2 fights away from solidifying himself into that position. Yeah. And Calvin Kattar, it is a big. I was a little on the fence when you said derailing factor, but I can see it now, because you're right, man. This dude only fights once a year. He wants to get back to where he is 2 fights down the road, man. We're talking 3 years from now. Yeah. I don't know, 37. It's a little. You're getting to that. Oh man, I just blanked his name. The one that just fought last week. You know, you're getting into that Alexander Arlovsky.
Oh, okay. So I mean, Yuri and Glover, is that who?
Glover. Thank you, brother.
Oh, Glover.
Thank you.
Okay,
yeah, getting to that Glover territory. I don't know why I couldn't think of Glover Teixeira. Yeah. But yeah, getting to that age, man, where it's starting, you really got to make those moves.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Ultimately, Josh Emmett, he got the job done. A win is a win is a win, and that's all we can call it at this point. I do think there was no true loser. I think both of these dudes should remain where they're at. Like Josh Emmett, yeah, raise him up a little bit, but I don't think Calvin Kattar should lose his number 4 spot personally. Maybe at worst take him down to number 5, but at the end of the day, Josh Emmett, bad man, and a hell of a right hand. But lastly, brother, let me just mention this. I just had to mention this. I just felt like this was a different Calvin Kattar that we saw. I felt like this wasn't a fully on Calvin Kattar. It took him 3 rounds to wake up. They even tell him in the corner, wake up, bro. What's up? We need you to finish this guy. Do something. But big win by Josh Emmett.